Hey guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. So we're going to do a mod on our IIR arcade cabinet. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace these speaker grills and we're going to install these LED speaker rings. These have 35 LEDs in them. And so we're just going to mount them like so. That's one mod. We're going to put an effects matrix here in the middle. We also have a 7-segment kind of retro display to show years, the year a game was made, and hopefully eventually high scores. Not high scores, but running live scores. So that's here. So we're going to replace this stock piece of acrylic and replace it with this guy. And then to make things a little easier, we've got a nice little mounting template. I'll show you that in a second. And then we're also going to do an LED strip. So we're going to do an LED strip up here, go around the back, and then go down the bottom. So that's this one here. So let's go ahead and get to it. So the first thing we need to do is take off our speaker grills. So let's just okay, so this piece is then going to come off. We're not going to use this, so just set it aside. Okay, now what I'm going to do, since we're going to be drilling holes and stuff, I don't want like dust to get stuck in here, so I'm just going to mask off right here with a little bit of masking tape. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take our mounting template and there's a little bit of play here. And by the way, these holes aren't going to line up exactly with the speaker grill holes there. So just FYI, you'll have to just put in new holes. They're pretty close. So just kind of, there's a little bit of play here. So just kind of eyeball it, kind of get it centered like so. And that looks good. Let's go ahead and tape it down. And the only really hard part about this, we're going to drill a bunch of holes. That's easy. The hard part is going to be this. We need to cut out here because this is going to be a panel mount for our 7-segment display. So that's really the hard part about this. We'll get to that. But for now, let's just kind of make sure everything looks good and start drilling some holes. Okay, now these speaker grill holes, again, they aren't going to line up. So and you don't have to go all the way through. You can just go like halfway through. I'm going to put some more tape so we just don't get all this dust everywhere. All right, so with these holes, we need a bigger drill bit. This guy, but we first should drill some pilot holes to make it easier. So let's do that. Okay, let's drill our bigger holes. Now these ones, you'll need to like have a smaller bit, so you'll need to kind of open these up a little bit. So I'm just gonna go like this, just to make it a little bit bigger, because I'm using a smaller bit. The middle one you're okay, but these two on the side, use a little bit more room. Okay, we can do a quick test actually. So if we take our matrix display, and if we just take this and feed it in, first of all, can our wires make it through? And then second of all, does it go in flush? So you should be able to put it kind of on the pattern, and as long as it's flush, which I can see it is, we're good. So our holes are big enough. All right, so now the hard part, we need to do this cutout right here. And for this, I'm going to use my multi-tool. You could also use a jigsaw, which might actually be easier. And this is kind of the first time I'm using this tool, so I don't really know what I'm doing. So if you're watching, you may have a better way to cut out a square than I'm doing it. Okay. I think that's good enough. Okay, so the tool does the job, just takes a long time, so you just got to be patient with it. Now let's take our 7-segment display, which is like this, and let's just make sure that we got enough. The hole is all good, which I think it is. So I'm just checking that my hole there was wide enough, which it looks like it is. So here's our next challenge. We want to go ahead and mount these speaker rings. So you can see this is flush, which is nice, but we have to deal with these wires. The wires have to go behind. So basically, speaker ring, we need to somehow get these wires past these speakers, and you can see the speakers are actually taking all the space. So what we'll do is we'll take out the speakers from the back, we'll route a little hole here enough to route the wires through. So that'll be our plan of attack. So let's go ahead and turn this guy around. Hopefully I got room here. Let's go ahead and take out this piece so we can get to the back. We need to get to the speakers. Okay, so here is the back. So we want to basically take these speakers out, and we're just going to route a little hole on the top there. So let's first take, no, by the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. I have Glenn's KVM switcher kit. So originally with the iArcade, if I remember right, there was like an amp that was here. So obviously before you start drilling, make sure that that amp is no longer there. If you've got Glenn's kit, I think that you would have moved it, but just something to double check. So let's go to mark the line on the back. This is basically how far our cutout needs to go. So you can see it needs to go pretty high, about right there, and then a little bit more for the actual wires to go through. So that's what we need to get to. So here's our speaker grill. So you can see it needs a fair amount of room just because of the way the wires are spaced. On this side, I think we're also okay. Yeah, it's going through. So let's go ahead, flip it around on the other side. Now we want to take our front acrylic piece and go ahead and remount it here. Let's tape it down so it's not moving. I've lined up my speaker grill holes here. Okay, now the thing is here, we do want to remove the masking tape before we put this in, otherwise we'll never be able to get back at it. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll get our screws ready. I'm actually going to reuse the same screws that came with the iArcade. So we'll get those ready. And let's just kind of make some room on our speaker grill. Okay, you notice that you see the hole cut out, right? But don't worry, because the speaker grill is large enough to cover that up. What I would do on the speaker grill, because it is going to move like this, is once you get it where you want it, I would just put a little bit of tape And you're not going to see the tape, so don't worry about that. Just to make it a little easier for you. That's all we need, just like that. Okay, so then we line up the holes. Okay, now let's do the other side. Got our speaker grills on, so let's go ahead and flip it around the back. So let's go ahead and attach the speakers back on the back. You can see we barely got enough. Our wires are still there. We can use the original holes, so that's good. Okay. Okay, so now let's route our effects matrix. So on this one, just look at the arrow on the back. Arrow's pointing up, so just flip it over. So you've got it right side up. Okay, just make sure you get the wires through the holes, otherwise it's not going to go flush. And then take your machine screws here and just find the holes. All right, nice and flush, no play, so that's good. And let's go ahead and flip it over and just attach the screws on the other side, the hex nuts. Okay, so here's our screws coming out. So we're just going to take a little washer here. Little M3 hex nut. And don't tighten too much. You got a driver tool, you can just do it just a little bit, not too tight. This, by the way, is where we're going to inject 5 volts into our WS2812B stream. So for the most part, we're done drilling holes. We actually have one more hole to drill, but let's go ahead and take this off. Last but not least, we're going to install our LED strip. And so basically, we're going to take our strip and go like so, around the back, and then down this way. And what's cool about the Pixelcade software is you don't need to cut your strip. Because even though our strip, so basically we're gonna go like so, and then in the software you can define your zones for the strip. So basically we'll say, okay, we want the strip to go all the way up to whatever number LED this is, skip all these, and then go down this way, and we can tell it to reverse this direction. So that is all taken care of in the software for you, so you don't need to cut your strip. So don't think you need to cut your strip. That'll save you a lot of time. So I think we might be able to get away with routing the LED strip wire kind of under the keyboard. So I'm just going to undo the keyboard here. Let's see if that'll work. So I think we're in luck. I think there's enough room in this gap here to hide the wires beneath the keyboard so we can get to them under there, and we don't have to drill any holes. So that is really cool. That is awesome. So basically this is going to be super easy. We're just going to route this guy like so, go through the back, and then go here and then go down, and then we'll cut it at the end. So I'm going to take out the taking out the sticky. So I'm just using this really thin, it's actually really strong double-sided tape. I can post a link to it, but we'll see if this works. So far it seems to be working out. And then just sticking it on there. Like I said, this stuff is really strong, so I think probably going to do the job, is my guess. So here's what I'm going to do on the back, because even though we're not going to see it on the back, I'm still going to try to make it a little cleaner just so the wire, just so we don't have wires hanging out and getting tangled and stuff. Okay, so when you get to the end, this is going to be the last device in our chain. So we don't need this connector, which is good, so we don't have to deal with hiding it. We can just literally cut the strip. So what you want to do is find the last sort of segment, and right where these copper strips are, I think that's the one we want. Maybe one more above it. Let's see. Let's try that one. Then we can just cut it right there. Perfect. Okay, we'll do one last piece of tape for the very end. Well, that's it. Okay, so that actually looks pretty clean. Okay, so let's go ahead and reattach our Pixelcade marquee. So on the back, we're going to have this piece. So I think what we'll do is we'll just drill a hole right here, and that way we can route these wires from here. Then we also need this wire to plug into our board, so we can use the same hole for that. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll drill a pilot hole. Okay, so we can put this one down here along with our common ground. And our 7 segment can go up here. Perfect. So now I think we have everything here nice and clean. So let's go ahead and connect stuff. And this is pretty straightforward. You just have to remember what's connected to what, because you may want to write this down because we'll need to know that in the software. So I think what we'll do, we'll start here since this is the closest one. So let's go ahead and connect these guys. And then we can connect these two. And then we can connect these two. This is nice. I don't need an extender cable. Didn't plan that, but I'm happy with it. And then lastly, we will need an extender cable. just grab yourself some of these extender cables here. I think this one is probably plenty. And so this is going to go to the last device in our chain, which is the LED strip. Okay, so remember we hid that LED strip behind the keyboard. So that's now here. And that is our last device in our chain. That's it. Easy peasy. So I also drilled one more hole here, and that way I can route the USB cable for Pixelcade through here as well. And also the 12 volts power for Pixelcade went through this existing hole. So that way everything's pretty clean. All right, that's Smelvin the arcade shop cat to help me out here. But originally, so this setup has 343, I think, active LEDs. And originally I tried to run this off this 5 volt, 10 amp power supply, but it's just not enough. It cuts out and it just doesn't have enough amps to keep up. So we're gonna switch over to this more beefier power supply, which is a 60 amp power supply. So 5 volts, 60 amps. And so this should have plenty. I like this version. You'll see other versions like this out here, but I like this version because the mains 120 volts are not exposed. Like you can't touch your fingers and shock yourself. It's protected in this enclosure. So I really recommend getting this one if you can. I'll put a link to it. And then we're just basically, it's pretty simple. We got our 5 volts, we got our ground, and we're just gonna hook it up just like we did the other one. Also, very important, because we're using external power, you have to connect your common ground from the board to this power supply, specifically the negative terminal, which is right here. So all we're gonna do is we're just gonna plug this end into the Pixelcade V2 board. That's gonna get ground off that, and then we're gonna take this and then connect that also to the negative end terminal here. So let me show you how to do that. So step one, just plug this into the blue connector on the back of the Pixelcade board. This cable is notched, so you can't mess up. It can only go in one way. So no need to worry about plugging it in the wrong way. So we've got that there. And then let's just thread this through the hole that we drilled earlier. So just so we can have a little bit of a cleaner install. Squeeze that in there, a little bit of a tight fit. Okay, so it's a little bit of a tight fit, so this end is actually easier, so let's go that way. Plug in our power supply from earlier, and then you'll notice that we have this white wire. So this wire is going to be white. And let's see, we want to connect this in, by the way, to the first device in our chain. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and then this wire is our ground, which is going to go to our power supply. So I just made up a little cable here. So here's our cable that we're going to connect. See that you got these little terminal things. And these will just screw into the power supply nice and easy. So first things first, let's take, so the black is always ground. Again, the white is their common ground here. So I'm going to go ahead, take the grounds, the two grounds, and just kind of tie them together. And what we can do on our cable is just put a little heat shrink on there just to make it a little cleaner installation. You can use electrical tape too, that's totally fine. All right, now let's again, let's start with the red wire. Just twist them together. Same thing for the black. And again, remember the black has our common ground. from both the Pixelcade board and our external power supply. Now I'm just going to take some solder and just wrap it around here. Okay, so let's get our soldering iron going. Once it's cooled down, which you can feel to the touch, just take your heat shrink, kind of make sure there's no like really jagged edges. And we're going to take our heat gun here. You could use a hair dryer too if you don't happen to have a heat gun handy. Hair dryer also works. Okay, so now we just need to connect our power supply. So here's our power supply. Ideally, we want to set it like this because there's a fan in there, but we're kind of, I don't know, we kind of want to set it on top of Glenn's board. So we'll just put it on the side. If the fan becomes an issue, we'll deal with that later. But now, easy peasy, just take your terminals here, and the black one goes to negative. The red one goes to positive. So let's start with the red one. And these ones just pop it in there and just screw it down. Get a nice solid connection. Okay, let's do the black one. Okay, just give a little tug, make sure it's in there nice and tight. And then we can just plop this in here. Again, ideally, we should be putting it up, but we're kind of low on room here. So let's go ahead and turn it on right now. It's not plugged in yet, but we'll leave the switch in the on position because we're going to go to common power strip. And I'll just kind of squeeze, I may have to go this way. Squeeze that in there. Okay, not the best, but I think it's good enough. Okay, so now we're just going to plug all of this into our common power strip and give it a shot. This is pretty nice. Like everything's in here, it's all wired up. It's not, you don't have these wires hanging out. It's pretty clean install, so I'm happy with that. So just to show you real quick, we have 4 plugs, which are all going to go into the common power strip. This is from Glenn's KVM switcher. It's our new power supply. One is Pixelcade, and one is Arcade. So while we're on the back, so just a reminder on how this is going to work. So as I mentioned earlier, the LED strip is all one piece. We didn't have to cut it, so that makes our installation easier. But of course on the back, we don't really want to light up these LEDs on the back because we're not going to see them. There's no need. And so what's nice is with the Pixelcade software, we can define these things called zones. We can say, okay, the first zone goes up to this many LEDs, skip all of these, and the second zone starts here and continue. So I'll now show you how to set up the zones in the software. So what you want to do is go to Pixelcade Companion. In this case, I'm on the Arcade OS. I'm going to type in arcade.local, but that could be your IP address of your arcade device, whatever that may be. Let's then go to Settings. And then the first thing we want to do is turn on Pixelcade Pulse. So we'll go ahead and hit Enable. And then we need to add the zones. So if you remember, the first zone that we wired up was the right speaker ring. So let's go ahead and hit that. Let's pick LED ring. In this case, it was 35. Hit save. Then the next zone was the center matrix, and this was of type matrix, and that was an 8x8. If you've got a larger arcade, you'd pick 8x32, but in this case it's smaller, so 8x8. Then we're going to go to our left speaker ring. Okay, and again, that's LED ring 35. Okay, and then the next one was the right strip. And in this case, you probably want to measure out how many pixels, because remember in this case, this was all one big strip. So I've measured it out and it's a total of 104 pixels. And then I've also measured out the left strip, and that one starts at 384, because remember we have some in the back that we're not using, and this one was 105. Hit save. And then in this case we are using the 7-segment display, which is here, so let's go ahead and turn that on. And then for this to take effect, we need to do an apply changes and restart. So let's go ahead and do that. And then while we're waiting for that to reboot, it takes about 30 seconds, so a couple of things I wanted to show you. So we included in here a power supply calculator. So this is important. So in this case, we're using 340 LEDs, that's a lot. And so it gives you, typical usage, 6.9 amps, but that's not going to be full brightness. Maximum usage 20 amps. I really recommend a 25 amp power supply because you want to have a little margin there. So it'll basically tell you how big your power supply needs to be based on how many LEDs you have. So definitely pay attention to that. And then as we went in the wiring video, just make sure you don't forget that common ground, right? So just a little reminder there. Some more information here. So now we've rebooted so that we can go ahead and do a test. So let's go ahead and say test the left strip and test okay, so this is reverse. So I think I did it the wrong way. Yeah, okay, so I did it backwards. So actually, this is a good point. Let's go ahead and fix that. So the right strip should be the left strip and vice versa. So I think what I need to do is delete the left one. And let's change this to left. Okay, that was the same. And then let's add back the right. Okay, and this one, okay, starting at 384, and then we had 105. There we go. Oh, and then also this is reversed on the right side, just based on how we're wiring it. So you want to hit reverse. I'll explain what that means here in a sec. And then because we changed, we need to restart again. So let's do a restart. While that's restarting, just note that the maximum number of pixels is 2000. Probably not going to hit that, but just in terms of firmware memory and things like that, that's the limit, just FYI. And while we're waiting, when it comes back, there's all these tests you can do, right? So we've got all our zones here, and let's see, I think we've reconnected. And let's say, for example, on the left strip, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. So let's go back first and just do a test and make sure I got it right. So I'm going to test left strip. Good. Clear it. I'm going to test the right strip. Awesome. Clear it. Let's test the center. Good. Clear it. Let's test the right speaker ring. Great. Test the left. Great. So now we have everything wired up correctly. And you can kind of see what some of the effects are. So let's say, for example, let's do the left strip. And let's just do basic effects. And let's just do like Comet, for example. So you can see the little effect to go there. You can change the colors and speed. You can play around with all that. But what I wanted to show you was, let's go back to, I want to show you what the reverse means. So if I do laser shot, see how it's going like that? Now, the right strip is actually wired the different direction. So if we didn't have reverse, that shot would go the wrong way. But since we do have it, and hold on, let me clear here. Let's just try that again. Okay, right strip, and do Okay, so now you can see it's going the correct way. So that's what the reverse. If we didn't have the reverse checkbox, then it would be going the other way, which is important for some of the Doppelganger effects and things like that. So that's basically how we wire everything up. You can play around with some more effects here. So for example, let's go to center matrix. You can see some of the ones, and I'll show you a demo of some of the games, but like here's Dig Dug. So you can see a little animation there. So you can play around with that. Let's also test the 7 segment. Okay, so we've got numbers there, so we know that's working. That's great. Trying to think if there's anything I've missed here. But that is in essence how you set up the zones in Pixelcade. We've also got the brightness. So I hooked up a nice beefy 60 amp power supply. So you can ramp it up to high brightness if you want. It's not going to be a problem. But just know that when you do that, you lose a little bit of color depth when you do the brightness like that. So just FYI on that one. If you have any questions, just drop a question for us in the Discord. I hope this was helpful and hope you guys like it. Thanks so much.